This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Harry's. Harry's will send you high-quality shaving equipment and razors directly to your door. If you go to harrys.com, that's HARRYS.com, and use the offer code THUMBS at checkout, you will get $5 off your first order. That's harrys.com with the offer code THUMBS for $5 off your first order. And now I've done this ad, and I am here in the office by myself, talking to myself, because Jake and Nick aren't here yet, and I'm just hanging out. Everyone see that Wizard Jam stream? Yep, that was good. Good video. Good content on the internet. I'm sure Jake and Nick will be here any minute. What if I pick a random word to see how many times I can say it to Nick before he notices and observes it? I'll tell you guys because you can hear me, but he won't know, and Jake won't know. What should the word be? Okay, what about? I don't know why this. I don't know why this was. I just went to the Word of the Day website to look through some recent words to give me some ideas. So, what about Slyboots? This word is described as an engagingly sly or mischievous person, as in that Nick Brecken is a real Slyboots. See if I can get it. This is such a stupid idea. So let's see how many times I can use that before he realizes something's going on, or Jake, I suppose.
It's June 16th, 2016.
This is Idle Thumbs 267, I imagine. I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
You guys are terrible.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
That's true.
That is the truth. And we are terrible because it's E3 week. The week of entertainment for all.
They don't still call it E for all, do they?
E for all was never E3. There was a year that was like now 10 years ago when E3 like ended in quotes,
right.
And then some other organization rented out the LA Convention Center and were like, we're making E for all, the public E3, which was also not.
Then E3 came back as E5, and they next year they just ignored that.
Oh, man. Speaking of things with bad numbers coming back badly, the Xbox One is being sequelized.
Oh, man.
Sort of.
It's now the Xbox 2.
You wish it was the Xbox 2.
I really don't.
Oh, it's the Xbox 360.
It's the Xbox... It's the Xbox 3. No, Microsoft said that they're making a slim Xbox that's coming out soon called the Xbox One S, but there's also an Xbox One Scorpio.
What?
Coming out next year, which
there's
is
a different thing with an S?
Yes.
So there's the Xbox One S.
Yes.
Then there's the Xbox
One
S.
But then there's the Xbox One S period.
Yes.
Because it's an abbreviation.
It's an abbreviation. Which then they'll release the Xbox S spelled ESS. For the extra special system. I think the Xbox One Scorpio
Extra
is similar to what
Supreme, right.
It's similar to what
Those Slyboots.
Oh man, stop. Anyway, whatever. You don't care what the Scorpio is, but it's basically like
I care what the Scorpio is.
It's like the Neo of the Xbox world. Neo versus Scorpio.
Oh my god.
We're entering a dark and mysterious time for console hardware. It's actually not dark and mysterious. I think it's really interesting personally. I know that there are a lot of people who are on the fence one way or the other about the like mid-tier
constant update.
Like constant console as PC or console as iPad. I think it's good.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you think is good about it?
I think it I like as I don't know. I've when I started working at Telltale, we were PC only, and then moving to console was a weird thing for me to suddenly have a fixed platform. And there are strengths to it, but I like being able to have like a good like a cutting edge version of a game that you're making, and then also like have the previous generation in quotes exist as a fallback SKU that's on the same basic, like you're building for functionally a very similar system, but you can just turn stuff off. Like that's a total that's a thing in PC development that I like, as opposed to the previous generation just being a complete wipe and you have to have a clean slate. I also like for customers, it means that you can still buy the latest games on your system that you already own, and potentially that will give, like, if you're a person who can't afford the latest one or don't want to buy it yet, that doesn't mean you have to go buy the Call of Duty SKU for that year, that you know that if you then get the new system for Christmas, that copy that you owned is fucked. Instead,
it's the Blu-ray DVD pack-in.
Yeah, like if you have the PS4 copy of the games this year and then they download to include patches for Neo, your purchases actually literally just look better when you buy the new system, as opposed to like previous times when we've had a console generation slip. Like the last one felt like everyone was just releasing both versions of their game. I don't know.
But that, so sure, but it sounds like you're describing a situation where you believe that this is going to replace traditional console cycles instead of additive to them,
well,
right?
The quotes, the quotes that they've all been issuing are like, and most of the press like reads on the situation is that both Microsoft and Sony are looking at at cell phones and tablets.
Oh yeah, I was gonna bring up cell phones.
And
so you think
and going like, oh, why are we not making an iPad and then an iPad Pro, and then the iPad Pro's specs eventually slide down to become the new iPad, and then we introduce a new iPad Pro that's
so
like,
you don't think
better.
there's going to be like an Xbox 4
I don't
or
actually
a PlayStation
know.
5 that actually resets the hardware?
That's where like right now I think we're in a place where it's really actually potentially customer and for and middleware like Unity using developer friendly. If you're Naughty Dog, it's or equivalent, it's probably really a bummer that you've got to build for a new thing. But I think I think this mid-tier one is friendly for most people long term. But the place that's going to be actually interesting and potentially has good or bad ramifications that we can't tell is if the next piece of hardware that comes out after Neo, after Scorpio, is a clean slate, like a new console, like is the Xbox 2, or if they're like the Xbox Scorpion, you know, like the really interesting step for me is going to be what happens in the next time they refresh the hardware. Like if they, because I think both Xbox and PlayStation are on Intel derived hardware with modern-esque GPUs. Like their components are so similar to PC that maybe they can eventually do like what Apple kind of does but should be better at, and let developers drop support for systems after a certain year because the hardware has evolved so many steps away. Or maybe they'll just totally flip it and have a PlayStation 5. But like
past a point though, you wonder like what's the
actual like bottleneck?
Well, what is the distinction between this like I guess it's still easier than sort of building your own PC and this and that, but it just seems like I don't know. I mean,
what's the point of consoles at this point?
Yeah, like past the point, doesn't it just start to get like almost as expensive as maintaining a PC if you want to play if you want to like be in the best position, and then complicated in terms of knowing when you like fall off the compatibility curve, and like you have to be a real Slyboots to like figure out how to keep up with that like process, right? As a player, I don't know. It seems.
Well, there are always going to be platforms, regardless of PC or console, right? I mean, like, there's the Origin platform, the Steam platform on PC, where at this point, it's just almost as obnoxious to me as Steam or as, you know, PS4 and Xbox. So I just feel like probably everything's just going to move more towards that, right? Where, like, already it has, where the hardware is kind of essentially
I guess look at iPhones. People either pay $400 when a new iPhone comes out, or they go, I'll wait next year for the next iPhone. Oh, my apps are getting real slow. Oh, I'm running out of space. Yeah. I guess this is the year when I buy a new phone. And like Sony's and Microsoft's goal seems to be make developers work the way app developers work, where when you release something, it works on all of this shit. And here's I think a really big spoke in that wheel though. Did you see reporting recently about how most people just do not download new apps anymore? Like a phone is not like a gaming platform. Like a gaming platform, the whole point of it is that you're getting new games, maybe not all the time. I mean, some people only buy a few a year, but like the point of it is not like you're not just going to hang out with your Xbox or with your PlayStation without the content. Whereas on a phone, like most people have basically figured out the apps they need. It's pretty much just the already existent huge apps that get like that people continue to download.
And also, none of those apps are really taxing the system hardware. Like, you can make Facebook run better, but you don't need a new phone to run it. You know, you kind of want the new phone just for the general improved experience and the new hardware features. But game developers are always looking to like max out hardware and be like really graphically impressive. And games are just way more demanding and sort of interactive and complicated and unstable than phone apps are.
Right.
I don't think that I don't think those two ecosystems and models are interchangeable. I don't know. I'm very skeptical of this personally.
I wouldn't say I'm skeptical. I think Jake made a lot of good points that I hadn't thought about. But I also just, my instant reaction was just complete malaise. Like, I just, you know, it's weird. Like, at this point, I don't know. And I guess I'm just a bad person to have a reaction to this, because I also just didn't really follow any E3 stuff this year. And also, they haven't looked at an Apple conference in a while and don't really care about.
Yeah, but we already knew about
things,
the PlayStation version of this, basically.
Yeah, but like, I just, God, I guess at this point, if they're not, I mean, it just really has reached a point where none of this stuff means as much as it used to, which also means that I care a lot less about it, and also probably
that's
which might be a good thing ultimately. Which is why,
the fact,
you know,
that,
like,
the fact that it does mean less than it used to is why I'm glad that they're kind of plateauing and letting developers actually keep a very similar code base running and iterate over time, as opposed to, like, I mean, the fact that they can go from a 1080p console to a 4K console and keep the same architecture under the hood in a way that you did not used to be able to when you went from 16 colors to 256 colors, from 2D to 3D, from, you know, not having shaders to having them. You know, like, the architecture doesn't seem like it's changing that much, and I'm glad that the hardware manufacturers are at least experimenting with it. I mean,
so that part I agree is sort of an unambiguous good, right? Like, for all of the challenges of PC gaming, something that is clearly correct about it from a development standpoint is that the architecture doesn't just reset itself. Like, even if you have it's, as a developer, you're making games for basically the same platform year in, year out, even though all kinds of new graphical features are introduced and, you know, hardware specs change radically, but like, the architecture is the same. You're not making a game for just a totally different computer every fundamentally differently built computer. And that's obviously good, because it means things like old games can be made to run on modern computers with a bit of tinkering or maybe with some software support. But like, that's totally possible, whereas there just isn't any version of that on consoles. And so from that standpoint, that stuff is obviously good. I'm just sort of without knowing what the actual like 5-year, 10-year plan is for, and maybe the manufacturers aren't yet sure of this either, but without knowing how that actually works on this sort of like release side, I just don't yet know.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, it's your day, Nick.
I mean, just it feels really
like
hard to get.
They could be real Slyboots about this.
They could be.
Fucking Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Chris is really trying to make Slyboots happen.
Chris is really trying
podcast.
to make the episode title happen.
It's not gonna.
No, I don't know. It just feels like across all of gaming right now, there are so many hardware things happening that I just don't know how I'm going to ever be excited.
True. Also, hardware fatigue.
Like, if we're going to have 2 different consoles announced from each platform holder at any given time, plus a VR platform, plus like new graphics cards, and just like all of the things that you could potentially buy, I'm just not going to buy any of it because I don't know what to do and I don't really care. Like, I just,
and Razer announced a new
open source VR
thing, except apparently they already even had like a simpler VR headset before that I didn't even know existed. So like, that's just how overwhelmed we are with new hardware you can buy.
I feel like it is fair to say what you just said, Nick, but on the other hand, I also don't know how fair that is, because I think VR hardware proliferation and the existence of iterative console SKUs come from very different places. It's like VR headsets. When I heard the analogy,
they do until they're tied.
They're not. They're fucking not, though.
Well, they might be in the
future.
They
are literally right now not. That is a thing that is not actually happening.
Well, you mean except for the PlayStation one?
The PlayStation, I mean, sure, Sony's peripheral works with Sony consoles, but also the same headset works with both of their systems. Like, they're not like, and then there's also the HD one that exclusively, no.
But I'm just saying, like, if you want a Vive,
Oh, man.
you have to have a certain spec. If you want whatever future VR thing might be released for a console, you might need that new console. So I'm just saying, like, eventually, it's clearly going to be some kind of like, if you want this new thing, you've got to buy the new.
I hear that, and the counter argument to that, I think, actually is that it seems like people right now, we're actually at the point where people are trying to wrangle that. Like, NVIDIA is like, the cards that came out or that are announced this year are both ones where it's like, you could put this in a computer and your computer will be able to do VR unless it's an ancient ass computer.
Yeah.
And the whatever AMD ATI, like their baseline new set is the same thing where it's like the cost. I don't know. I mean, that is fair, but for me, VR headsets are the one place that is that total bubble of just fuck off for me, where it's like that does feel like Rock Band versus Guitar Hero versus 1,000 other, like everyone is just vomiting peripherals that are functionally the same but don't actually work with each other and have specific software and specific apps that they're connected to. But I don't feel like graphics hardware or console hardware has that problem because they're deliberately right now trying to actually centralize around a small number of like platforms and tool chains for those, whereas the VR headsets is where it's like, oh, you're exclusive to our store. Oh, you're exclusive to we handle motion tracking with a camera attached to the headset, whereas we have cameras that you have to affix into your room, so they're never ever gonna work with each other. Like that's the hellscape is VR for me.
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true.
You're wrong, Nick.
No, I mean I think you're right insofar as that it really is just heading more towards phones at this point. But I think that what that means is that eventually you're going to buy a game and it's going to say, well, it looks like this on your iPhone 5 and it looks like this on your iPhone 4, but then also it doesn't run on your iPhone 3, and it's just this weird tier thing where eventually I just kind of lose track of
it's going to be weird when the next, like in 2 years of now, is Call of Duty. Technically, it runs on the PlayStation 4 because it has to, but it's a shitty port. But I mean, I really think we're not going to be able to definitively know what any of this stuff means until we're 2, 3, or 4 years down the line at an E3 when they announce what their next hardware is and like what that actually means for all of the ambitions that we're living inside of right now.
Yep.
I don't know. Does that seem accurate to you?
Yeah,
it does.
That's why I said it's hard for me to know how I feel about this until I know what the sort of almost 5 or 10 year plan is.
Yeah, until we've been living inside it for a while, then we're told that it was terrible.
It's too late.
Yeah.
I guess my reaction to this is despite everything I said, is probably closer to what Nick described. That's less qualitative and more just overwhelmed. Like it's honestly just really hard for me to keep up with all of the things that are announced about video game platforms. And like, I know Jake, you're right that the VR headsets are not the same. Like they're totally not the same thing as this sort of incremental platform upgrade release thing that seems to be encroaching. They are totally separate and they come from different places.
But also there are just objectively a lot of them now.
But as someone who's just like keeping up with it all, like it's so hard for me to remember which VR headsets are actually out and which ones aren't, and like how much they all cost and which ones play what. Like and I know that's not the same thing, but just when you combine all the different hardware things that are out there, like it's just kind of a little bit overwhelming. I know some people just receive that information more easily. I'm just the kind of person who finds that stuff hard to remember.
Well, I feel like I just bought, I mean, I'll sort of seg us into a new territory here, but I feel like I just bought my Wii U specifically to play the new Zelda, and now the new Zelda has been announced as a launch title for the next Nintendo console.
That's infuriating to everyone.
Oh yeah, that's infuriating to everyone, but that's just really like...
That's a classic thing, though.
That's a classic Nintendo move, of course. That's a classic Wii Twilight Princess.
But then they still secretly put the GameCube one out. And then I didn't buy the Wii version because I wanted to play with the controller. But then I realized what I didn't want to play at all was Twilight Princess.
Right.
Despite how excited I was for Twilight Princess.
Twilight Princess was the progenitor of this new console methodology. It ran on both the GameCube and the Wii. It was...
oh man! And just to subtly, really troll everyone, Twilight Princess was horizontally mirrored on the Wii because you swung your sword with your right hand.
Oh man, I forgot about that. That's so
just
weird.
Just to make it have a little bit more of like an eerie, what are the imperceptible differences here? In one of them, Link is right-handed, and one of them he's left-handed. God, that was such a strange minute there.
Yeah.
Also, that must have been fundamentally like the exact same build of the game, but with slightly different controls turned on because the hardware is the same.
Oh yeah,
so weird.
Yeah.
Only the Wii can. Oh man.
Yeah.
That was a bad time.
But that new Zelda,
It looks really cool.
Yeah, it does look really cool. I'm really excited about that new Zelda game.
Yeah.
I guess I went to E3 and came back excited about stuff.
Oh yeah,
Sorry, everyone.
Jake actually went to E3.
Oh yeah,
Nick and I didn't, but Jake was there.
I was there for the Sony press conference, and I walked into the convention center far enough to say hi to someone and shake their hand, and then stand near a gigantic inflatable bag of Doritos that was like a full 1.5 stories high, and was just like really proud that I was at E3 standing near a huge Doritos bag, and then I left. So my E3 experience was very small, but I did watch all of the new Zelda videos, and I was really excited about it.
Yeah.
The new Zelda game, it looks like
What's it called? It's called The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild.
Breath of the Wild. Yeah, it's very focused on having a huge outdoor landscape. It's aesthetically really evocative of like Miyazaki movies, kind of, or even like the old illustrations from the old Nintendo manuals and strategy guides and stuff. Like it feels like it looks like the cover of the Link to the Past Nintendo Player's Guide to me. Like,
oh man, and it also just from the few videos that I watched, it feels a little bit like in the Shadow of the Colossus kind of vein.
Oh well, it's an interesting Zelda game because it feels like Nintendo has been like threatening, but like a positive Nintendo, every players will be excited threat to change up the format of Zelda for a long time. And I think people thought like, oh, maybe Twilight Princess will, or maybe Skyward Sword will. Yeah. And it wasn't until A Link Between Worlds, which was the 3DS Zelda game, that it felt like they had actually experimented with the formula at all, where they introduced the item shop where you can go in and just rent or buy any item in any order. And that was like, oh, maybe Nintendo's trying to actually unchain the order of events of Zelda games.
What's really interesting about this one to me relative to, say, what you just described as a tweak on the Zelda formula is typically Nintendo is this very odd developer where often they will talk about sort of changing the formula to their classic game or doing this or that, but the tweak to it will often be an extremely interesting but also extremely esoteric just thing that seems like it came out of a brainstorm session that is disconnected from the entire
what
rest
if
of
Link
the
could be
industry.
a painting was the way that they actually sold A Link Between Worlds being a mix-up, and everyone was like, a painting that's stupid, you can go onto a wall, and then the secret good one was that they added that out-of-order item shop thing.
Well, but the painting thing, like, aside from the specifics of that one exact game, like the things that those weird things like Link as a painting
or Link as a wolf,
right, are sometimes actually like cool or fun or whatever. They're just a character of change that is totally not how the entire rest of the video game industry iterates on things, which is kind of what makes Nintendo an interesting developer in the first place. But what's crazy about this one is it actually looks like Nintendo. The designers of this game have played other games that aren't Nintendo games. They played some Far Cry. Which is they played like Skyrim and Far Cry. It's it's so weird. It's
like it's got a lot of Minecraft and Don't Starve type stuff in it as well. Like it feels. Yeah. I really like. I mean, we should get into some of the specifics, but I really like looking at this game. Like I think from a pessimistic standpoint, you could say that the new features in the Zelda game are derivative of a lot of games that have come out recently. But at the same time, I don't care about that argument, even though I've read it in a few places. But two, I actually really like that Nintendo, I think, spawned a lot of like the Legend of Zelda is the progenitor of a ton of stuff, and I really like seeing
basically the action adventure genre as we know it.
I love seeing the Legend of Zelda as a series look outward at a lot of the things that are its progeny, and then brought a lot of that stuff back into it and made a really what looks like a really slimmed down Nintendo version of that stuff. Like it's the first Zelda game with a jump button, but that's because you can just climb up any vertical surface. Like you can just Shadow of the Colossus the world, and Link has an endurance meter. Like this game, it seems like it's taken a lot of like stats and item numbering and like integer based stuff, like you have 3 bombs or you can make 3 jumps or whatever, and turned all of that stuff into cooldown based stuff. Like you can only climb as high as Link has energy to climb, and that's how they gate.
But that can presumably increase over the course of the game.
It probably can, but I'm not sure if it will, because they use it to prevent you from Skyrimming off the world map. Like
right, but you could still design walls that are intended to only.
It seems like the modifiers that they've shown, instead of increasing the endurance meter, like massively shorten your cooldown time or increase your climbing speed or whatever. But yeah, I'm sure they could also easily make the meter longer. Or
well, if you increase your climbing speed, but
you get some kind of power glove.
Oh, that's true. That's functionally the same.
Yeah.
That's
some
true.
Boots, some cool boots.
You could equip your Slyboots. You can equip stuff now.
Yeah, you can rent those Slyboots from the store.
Everything being timer and cooldown based pairs with the fact that it seems like they've also just gone all in on everything being, or not everything, but huge elements of the game being physics based or physically simulated, where like Link's powers are things like you have a bomb and the bomb is a sphere, so that you can throw a bomb in Zelda that will roll down a hill and kill the wrong guy.
Yeah, the bomb rolls down.
And
the hill.
also, the bomb rolls down the hill.
It's watching. So I watched a couple of their sort of big 30-minute videos about this game, or demonstrating the game in a live setting, which was good, because what you want for a game like this is to sort of prove to people when revealing it that this stuff is all legit and isn't canned. I mean, the Zelda series has a lot of amazing design in it, but one of its hallmarks, I think, actually increasingly over the course of the series, maybe this is maybe softened a little bit, but oddly, from the first game, the Zelda series actually sort of started to get more and more prescribed and constricted in its design and in its attitude towards player action. And then, of course, once it goes to 3D, that just intrinsically lets up a bit, because in a 3D environment, the player almost always can fuck around a little more.
Yeah, but they've been then locking them down more and more again.
Exactly, like. Yeah. And it's sort of in a way shocking to see how much they're modeling in this game and how much they're relinquishing that grasp on the player. It kind of, in retrospect, makes the series, the sort of latter era of the series, even more conservative in retrospect, because this demonstrates how much the Zelda flavor is still preserved despite how much they're sort of loosening the reins. And it seems totally like fine. I mean, it's kind of crazy to look back at how unwilling they ever were to let that hem out a bit, because it clearly still survives as a 100% identifiable and sort of self-possessed Zelda game, despite all this extra player tool set.
It was weird how evocative some moments in those videos were, like literally of playing Far Cry 2. Like it actually cracked me up.
Really funny.
There was a moment in that video,
the fire thing.
Yeah, there was a moment in that video where someone crests over a hill and looks down at a camp of like 3 goblins just doing like non-aggressed AI, and then somehow fucks up and rolls a rock onto the wrong guy and has to like sword them to death at the last minute. And I was like, what is that? What did I just see? Also, the grenades roll down hills and then cause fire to propagate. Also, I really like.
There's also a weather cycle.
Yeah,
day, night, and weather cycle.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Also, oh man, a thing that I thought it was funny and cute and very Nintendo-y, that they give you spherical bombs that are super physicsy, but then you can also unlock cube bombs that are less susceptible to physics mishaps. Like you can drop like a suitcase that has a little bomb wick on it instead. But like they showed off. It sounds like this game, it has full Zelda dungeons, but what Nintendo demoed at E3 were things that they're calling shrines, which are like just tiny. They said there's like 100 plus just like scattered small underground challenge areas, and they demoed a couple of them at E3. And the one with the bombs was like, it felt like a Half-Life 2 or a Portal environment, because the puzzles were all physics based, where like there were huge stone slabs that were at 45-degree angles that would then like jut out suddenly like a pinball spring launcher, and that was how you were taught what bombs were supposed to do in this game, where you like position things and time them correctly to launch them on like launch pads using physics. And it seems like they replaced the number of bombs that you have with a cooldown, because of the fact that since everything's physically based, you're probably just going to screw it up and eat shit and do all sorts of things you could never predict. So it would be impossible to punish people for bombs. And on that same note,
although if you wanted to really Far Cry 2 your players, you would they would be able to run out of bombs,
and there would be like shitty bombs and good bombs.
There is weapon degradation in this game.
That's true. Yeah.
Oh, there is.
Part of the core loop of this game is that your weapons fall apart and you kill enemies and pick up their weapons. So you're constantly in this loop of
you're churning through stuff. But then also there's crafting, but it seems like very, very forgiving and slim. There's no malaria, but like. There's hilarious shit. You chop down trees with an axe really efficiently or with a sword semi-efficiently. It falls in the direction that you're facing. So you can use a tree to bridge a gap to find a secret, or you can miss and then you got to go find a different tree to use. Also, a tree stump that falls on the ground, you can chop up with an axe and then it blips into two wooden bundles,
That's very Minecraft.
which you can then use as... You can equip the stick as a shitty sword, or you can set it on fire and use it to propagate fire, or you can use it to light enemies on fire.
Man.
I was like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Also, there's cooking and all sorts of garbage. Oh, this is the most Minecraft of all, is that you have an inventory of meat and other edible objects, which is what you use to get hearts. There's no hearts that spawn out in the world, but you can also craft things into 1, 2, 3 and hearts related. Like you can cook steak with mushrooms to make a meat skewer that's worth 3 hearts. But also there are like little improvements to this that I like certain prepared foods give you red hearts, but they will also give you yellow hearts, which are overcharge hearts. Like if you only have 3 heart containers, but you eat a food that is worth 6, you get 3 hearts temporarily, and then if they get lost, you can't re-eat to get them back, but it means you can sort of charge up with a good meal before a boss battle, basically, to like just get a temporary little like overfill. Like there's little stuff like that just seems really smartly done.
Yeah.
Since it's a Nintendo game, it seems like even if you craft a bunch of garbage together, you get an item. At least in the demo, they accidentally crafted a thing called dubious food that was still worth 1 heart. So like it's Nintendo. So they're like, if you craft some food together, we're not gonna just throw it away and give you dirt.
Yeah.
You at least get just like a 1 heart, just like questionably shitty meal out of it. Like that.
Does it play like a weird sound and Link makes a face?
I hope it doesn't.
It seems likely.
Yeah.
There's obviously the main thing we've been talking about, which I think is the by far the most interesting thing about this game, is the influence that, I would venture to guess is an influence from, largely, or at least significantly, Western game development, right? Games like the Elder Scrolls and Minecraft and all of the
Ubisoft games.
The vast, just huge landscape of large scale systems driven, physics governed exploration action adventure games that have really increasingly dominated the Western game landscape over the last decade or so. But there's also, and this is more arguable, I think, I don't know if I'm correct about this, it seems as though there's also some kind of influence from the Japanese, other non-Nintendo Japanese sort of fantasy franchises like Final Fantasy, in the sort of fusing of the introduction of technology into a series that has traditionally been straight fantasy, right? Like the Final Fantasy series was just fantasy in a sort of classic mold for several games, and then with Final Fantasy VI, I think, right, is they started introducing these like technological elements in the world, and when a lot of this Zelda seems like a softer introduction of that than Final Fantasy was, when there were like robots walking around, or like mech suits, but it does seem as though that is also influencing this game, right? Like,
yes.
Doesn't Link have a little screen device?
Yeah, which I'm sure that's
like,
the thing that feels like the most like a Nintendo gimmick. Like he has a tablet, which obviously maps to the Wii U controller, which is the tablet.
Yeah,
but it feels like the way they've treated that aesthetically is very like, it actually is pretty nice.
Yeah, but it's also explicitly technological. It's not like a magical tree bark that, you know what I mean? Like,
right, like he has a glowing techno tablet that he like RFID links in temples and stuff.
When he opens the map, it looks like a crazy computer, like it looks a cyber map.
Yeah, well,
it's crazy.
There's a thing, you can bring the tablet up to your eyes and he sort of like splits it open and there's a like camera inside of it, and then you can zoom into the world and tag enemies and tag waypoints that then show up on your map. So like you can like look off in the horizon, and put an X on a map of the sniper tower that you're going to.
Yeah.
This the way that this game has suddenly evolved and added a bunch of modern features, but also feels very freeing and surprisingly pared down, despite it being more baroque than other things, also feels very much like the Metal Gear Solid 5 trajectory to me.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
I think Metal Gear Solid 5 is a really good touchstone for this as well.
Yeah.
And
that's a good thing, because
hopefully not in all ways.
Hopefully not always.
Yes, true. Yeah.
The thing, the one piece in all of the
Has anyone seen Zelda's character model yet?
Oh God.
Oh jeez.
Oh no.
Anyway, what were you saying, Jake?
Side diversion, Link does start at the beginning of the game in just a pair of boxer briefs, and apparently you can complete the entire game in just those boxer briefs if you want to be really hardcore and never
Naked
armor
Link.
up.
Yeah.
Another Metal Gear Solid connection.
Yeah.
Nintendo was also really sort of goofily excited to point out that you can complete the entire game as a vegetarian if you want. That you can not hunt animals for meat, and you can just craft vegetables.
Yeah.
So you could be a boxer shorts, a naked vegetarian Link, and complete this game. That's like the hardest core
be
run.
A total burner.
Yeah. The one piece that does not seem like it's been hit very hard by the reassess everything in this game, from the videos at least, is actual enemy encounters, like the way that you fight a guy, and that. I might be misreading that.
You don't mean encounters. You just mean literally.
Sorry,
combat.
the combat, literally,
because the encounters are
the encounter
totally
design feel very different, but the actual the little goblin that goes burp, 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 and walks up to you feels exactly like a fight sequence from about like Wind Waker. Feels like about where that stuff landed, and although you can distract, you can like throw a thing into their camp before they see you, and they'll get distracted by it. And that's
go over
true.
And look
That
at
stuff's
it.
good. I guess once they aggro you, and it's
once
time
a sword
for, like,
is hitting a guy,
sword to guy, like it kind of bummed me out. Like there was a point when they used the new climbing system to like climb up onto an old like piece of decrepit castle wall that was out in the middle of nowhere, and instead of the goblin having any ability to like back up and use a ranged weapon or to like climb itself, they just sort of like rotated back and forth, like hugging against the edge of the collision, trying to get to you even though you had a height difference from them. And it was like, it's kind of a bummer, especially after playing the new Doom game, which is all about mantling up and down the sort of circle strafing guys. The enemies in Doom are fantastic
they have good markup.
at taking the actual fact that you have control over your height into account and still having classic Doom feeling encounters, or Doom feeling like combat with those guys. When I see Nintendo engage with those characters.
Yeah, I wonder why. So it seems like they have the bones of that, because enemies will, if you disarm an enemy in this game, they will pick up a different weapon. They'll pick up a rock. Like I saw a crazy thing where Link knocked a sword or whatever, a club out of the goblin's hand, and the goblin just found a rock on the ground and threw it at Link, which is I mean, that's like very cool
that's awesome.
and reactive. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like there are some walls that it runs up against.
It also might be that they just said, well, the place that we're going to draw the line is the way that Link swings a sword, the way that enemies like block and engage with attacks, like that little like micro loop of how you just fight a goblin in a 3D Zelda game. Maybe they didn't touch that specifically because they just decided that was where they were going to draw the line. I don't know. Like, I mean, the way that Link uses his sword feels exactly like Ocarina of Time still. Like that's the one piece that feels like it's been completely not touched, except for the fact that the sword eventually gets beat up and falls apart. Is the Master Sword going to degrade? That would be hilarious.
I imagine not.
No one has used this as been a museum piece for like 2,000 years. Why are you just clanging it against rocks to make fire? Also, yeah, once you find a flint rock, until it is used up, you can hit any metal object against it to create a spark to create a fire. Like they're doing good stuff. Cool. Yeah, who knows what it will be like as an actual game? Maybe it's going to be a hot mess of like boring goblins and bosses that you hit 6 times till they fall asleep over and over again. But I don't know. I don't think it will be. It doesn't look like it. Either. Oh, also it has a hang glider you can unlock just to really go.
Just to fully.
Yeah. It is really cool to see these huge franchises like Metal Gear and Zelda that seem to have fallen asleep at the wheel suddenly like
wake up,
pop up and realize that a bunch of the stuff that was really interesting about their earliest versions evolved separately from them, and then pulling all of that stuff back in and doing their version of it to be like this. Like it I hope that this Zelda game holds up to the promise that they're making, because it feels like a very nice assertion of like Zelda is actually where these experiences came from, and and they actually still belong here. And the same way that Metal Gear Solid 5 felt like the sort of that stealth genre then disappeared and went off into Splinter Cell and went off into Assassin's Creed and went off into all these other places. And like, seeing that stuff come back is really cool. Also, it's just really nice when Nintendo actually puts out a nice, polished, well-rendered looking thing that actually feels like nice to be in.
Yeah.
Mario Galaxy was one of the last times that I feel like they super duper did that, where I was like, this is like in its
Mario
lifetime.
Kart 8 was Mario Kart 8 was really nice to look at and everything, but it's not the same
that's
thing.
Such a known
it's not the
quantity.
same.
Like,
well, sure, but
yeah. I mean, Mario Kart. Don't get me wrong, Mario Kart is great. Like, it's a great series,
that was the closest though to
the closest thing on
major
the
Nintendo. Major Nintendo franchise bubble reimagined in a way that actually feels like it justifies its existence.
When's the NX supposed to come out?
I can't remember.
I think it's March next year, I think.
Okay.
Somewhere around there.
Did they say this is a launch title or anything? Did they not address that?
They didn't. They basically just canceled, or they didn't cancel because they'd never announced anything, but they said our E3 presence is going to be this Zelda game. That's all they had here. And they didn't say anything about that. They demoed it on a Wii U. So, like, who knows what hardware it was running on, but with the controller that it was running on was a Wii U tablet.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything, though.
Yeah. Who's to say? What I meant is, unless there's a big change to the UI and to how you can, like, they never cut to the Wii U display, but I got the impression that the reason the Nick Brecken, star of The Legend of Zelda, the reason that Link has a tablet in that is because it's Nintendo's classic move. The same way that, like, in the Phantom Hourglass, Link can draw symbols on a page because it was a DS. The reason he has a tablet is because the Wii U controller is a tablet.
Right.
And, like, by implication, they're either changing a lot about this game before it ships, or the NX is going to be another tablet console.
I imagine they'll just, if they think that, I mean, I would be not surprised at all if they just kept that basic controller design. But I don't know.
Hopefully it's even, like, more bubbly and fat, and, like, the screen's even squishier and more like
hopefully
an old like bank teller checkout screen.
Hopefully your Wii U controller just slots into it somehow and just becomes like a 32X. Like,
it's a grip. It's two grips that clamp onto the sides to give it two more analog sticks.
Yeah. That's what I'm hoping.
Do you remember when they put out that grip you could affix to your 3DS?
Yeah.
Stick? Man, what a choice. Players demand it's like a dual stick, that Metroid or whatever it was that was for. I don't know much else about what happened at E3.
That's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. That was like the most E3 content we've had on an Idle Thumbs in so long, I think. Like that was...
Yeah, I felt...
We usually just sort of pretend E3 didn't happen.
I didn't really pretend. I mean, that's the crazy thing for me is it's so difficult for me to want to watch press conferences. Like, I just... When E3 is actually... at this point, for me, it's like, okay... Over the sort of week or two following E3, I will just sort of, by osmosis, I will absorb the useful or worthwhile stuff that came out of E3 just because people will be reacting to it and talking about it. But when it's happening, it is so difficult for me to work up the enthusiasm to just watch hours of just presentations and press conferences. At
this point, it just seems like a lot of announcements for things that you already know are going to exist that are not surprising. And then the surprising things, if they exist, are just hidden underneath all of that noise. So, like, I'm sure, like, a month from now, I'll be like, oh, that thing was announced? Oh, that looks cool. But, like, I'm not going to know right now because my Twitter feed is just a disaster and everything else is just... signal boosting to the extreme, right? Just have no idea what actually was. The
last couple of years, E3 press conferences actually felt like they had a wide variety of stuff in them, like things like Cuphead or Tacoma or The Witness or whatever, were things that like people found out about because they were in keynotes. This year, it did not feel like that was the case. It felt like everyone was just showing off huge AAA stuff, which I think is probably because we're on the verge of a second launch window for both of these platforms. Like, I mean, I'm not sure if... Sony announced that they're doing a new console, but I don't know if the window for it is announced. And I know Microsoft said theirs isn't until next year, but it feels like they're like, everything's going 4K, motherfucker. Get ready for a lot of high frequency, high definition, AAA, dense as fuck environments, and you're going to watch some physics cloth flap against a guy's butt as you run him through a big ass world. Like, that felt like everything that they demoed this year, which feels like a console launch E3. Whereas, like, last year was like, Gone Home guys got a game in E3.
Yeah.
Firewatch was in E3. Like, it was different. It felt very different this year.
A lot of the things it's like, a lot of the announcements that I saw just at a cursory glance were VR announcements, and they were all VR experience announcements for things that seem very sort of like, I don't know, like short and vague, which I have no way of getting excited about that because I don't own a VR thing, so I don't even know, like, I have no touchstone for any of that stuff. But then also, like, maybe Batman VR will be amazing. I have no idea. I can't tell from a video, so there's no way for me to get excited about it.
Going back to what you were saying about the weird hardware proliferation earlier, it feels like we're in like a smaller and way weirder, like, hill climb to a launch of new stuff. It's not, but it has that same feeling of just like, okay, everyone's just throwing a lot of money against the wall right now, as opposed to like being mid-cycle, which we were the last couple of years. It's like, okay, it's time for the weird stuff because everyone is in the, like, all the big teams are heads down doing wherever the money is, which I guess is VR and mid-cycle 4K consoles. Giant Doritos bag. It was so huge.
I know, it's so big.
Yeah.
And it was a Doritos bag that said Doritos Taco Explosion was the name of that bag.
I saw so many different people on my Twitter feed posting pictures of themselves with the Dorito bag.
Yeah.
How could you not?
I know.
They distilled E3 down into its essence.
How self-aware do you think on the part of the Doritos marketers?
Oh, I think they're pretty self-aware.
Yeah.
Oh,
I went to twitch.tv/Doritos for 3 seconds, and it was just like
I went to that too,
an electronic rave that was happening, and I was like, oh, okay, this is exactly what I expected.
Doritos presents...
to make the Nick Brecken and a hand wave noise. I don't know how self-aware they were, because the lobby of that E3 was the Doritos mix station, where you could silkscreen a custom Doritos t-shirt. Like, there was like...
Were people taking them up on the custom Doritos t-shirts?
I don't know. I just saw a huge silk screening machine, and I saw like one guy looking through some CDs or something. It felt like it was like half a step away from a Doritos street team. So I don't know how self-aware it actually was.
Okay.
If it was Notch presents the Doritos mix station and party.
Here's the thing, though. In the current moment, it doesn't really matter how self-aware you are or not, because you can weirdly just, as a brand, you can just dive further into like the vat of irony and leave it to the receiver.
Twitch chat will just make it determine whatever it's going to be anyway.
Exactly.
So like nobody
you can
cares.
Kind of just like brands are simultaneously sort of derided, but also accepted unquestioningly, right? Like there's so much of a fabric of our just identity and sort of like online and I guess real world existence, that it doesn't matter how ironic or self-aware any of it is, because it won't actually be questioned at all. Like it's I don't know.
Yep.
Doritos can have twitch.tv/Doritos and fill the lobby of E3 with a huge Doritos bag and a custom Doritos t-shirts, and like people will just take it in whatever way they want, but Doritos will still just be everywhere.
They can have their chips and eat them too,
those
Chris.
Slyboots.
God damn it. Okay, we need to take a break right now.
Okay. Video game. This episode of Idle Thumbs is brought to you by Blue Apron. Blue Apron will send all the ingredients and recipes you need to make really convenient and delicious and healthful meals directly to your home. I've been doing it for a little while now. Last night I made these amazing little beef tortilla things with pickled onions, and
so I signed up for Blue Apron.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I'm gonna do it.
Did you use the? Did you use the?
I did use the order code.
So go to blueapron.com/idle, and you will get your first 2 meals free with free shipping as well. It's tough to beat that. So wait, have you already gotten your first one?
Not yet. Next week.
You're still waiting.
Next
okay,
week.
all right.
I look forward to hearing the tales of your Blue Apron experience.
I'm excited about it.
It's great. It's cheaper than going out to a restaurant, and you still get the sort of novelty of something that you would probably not, at least in my case, would not have cooked on my own, would not even have thought to cook on my own, because I just don't think of it.
So the thing that I already like about it is that like I already cook a lot, and so that's not like the thing that's attractive to me about it. But one, I like just like them delivering the actual portions of things, because often I'll just buy like a bottle of sesame oil and then never use any of it. So like it's nice.
The worst for me is the herbs and stuff.
Yeah, herbs and stuff.
Like a huge thing of cilantro,
because they never let you buy less than that.
Yeah, I know. And I'm with you on that. Like I've never really been scared of cooking or anything. I grew up in a family where my dad showed me how to cook, but there's just all kinds of ideas I would never think of in terms of like how to reuse the same ingredient as first like an aromatic in the pan and then as a garnish when you're done, and it looks totally pro, but it was actually really easy.
That stuff's really awesome.
Yeah.
Not only do you can you, if you need to, get over the hump of cooking at all, but you just also learn a bunch of technique for how to prepare all sorts of different foods you would never touch usually. It's really cool.
Yeah. So if you go to blueapron.com/idle, you can get your first 2 meals and shipping totally free. That's blueapron.com/idle. Video games. All right, I think we're back.
Oh, hey.
Hey there. So this past weekend, all 3 of us sat down for about 5 hours here in the studio and streamed dozens of games from Wizard Jam 2016, which is the this year's iteration, the recently concluded iteration of the community-created, community-run game jam that are like the Idle Forums just put together. And we kept telling ourselves we were going to do streams of these in the past, and we, just shitheads that we are, did not do it. But this time we did, and it was so... okay, I thought it was going to be good. I thought it was going to be awesome, because how could it not be? It was so much more amazing than I thought it was going to be. I'm so glad that I went in blind and kept myself from, even though it was difficult, kept myself from playing any of those games or even really looking at any of them beforehand, because I was just serially blown away.
IGN.com.
By everything that popped up on the screen. I mean, I can't believe how, just the range of creativity and just different ideas.
We were equally wrecked by just incredibly well realized, highly produced game, jam games that could basically go on Steam Greenlight right now, to totally novelty, weird first person gag experiences, to a Twine game. All across the range.
Also, I would say the other big category is unpolished stuff that is just a clever idea that could, with some work, be extended into something that could end up on Steam.
Or it could just stand on its own as just someone's really fun idea that just
any of these could as that.
It's really cool.
The number of different approaches to a game jam game was really high, and I think it was really, really smart of the people who originally conceived of Wizard Jam to put a 2-week limit on it, which is much higher than most game jams, and you end up with this really great, I think, sweet spot that you just don't see in a lot of game jams, which is allowing people who really already know what they're doing to bring something to a shockingly high degree of completion, at least in terms of proving out an idea. But you also have enough time that people who maybe can't just hit the ground running can actually spool up over the course of the 2 weeks and get help from other people or look for other team members. There was, I can't even say enough about just how impressive the overall slate was. It was totally incredible. If you go to youtube.com/idlevideos, the stream's up there. It's labeled as Idle Thumbs Wizard Jam 2016 Part 1 because our hope is to do Part 2 where we finish all the rest of the games that were submitted in this year's jam, and
I think we only got about halfway through.
I think we got about 2/3 through.
Okay.
Yeah. But we were talking about maybe also doing some from Wizard Jam 2015. I don't know. We'll see how that goes. Maybe that's yet a third stream. But yeah, you should check it out because it was crazy.
Yep. If you want to watch it with chat archived, you can also go to twitch.tv/idlethumbs, and it's in our highlights page.
That's true. Yeah, that's a cool thing about Twitch archives now is that you can follow along with chat as it was live.
Mm-hmm.
So you can watch people get totally destroyed by the shoot that pizza.
I was just going to say shoot that pizza. I knew you were going to say shoot that pizza.
Man,
oh, God,
yeah. Also, if you actually, we list the URL in the video. But if you're watching this video and much like watching someone streaming something, you're like, I gotta just go play these. You can go to itch.io/jam/wizard-jam-2016, and they're all there. So you can just go play Shoot That Pizza. Go play Shoot That Pizza, and then you'll know that you should play all the other games.
I went home and played them all again with Janelle, and had
awesome.
a really, really good time, and she was blown away as well. I don't know. She was just shocked at how professional and interesting all of them were, and I think, I don't know, it's good to see somebody else who has she listens to Idle Thumbs, but doesn't really, whatever. It's weird for us playing these games. She was like, oh, what's this? Is this an in-joke from this episode title? And I was like, I don't remember. I don't know. Maybe, but
maybe most of it is just people.
Most of it's just really good.
Taking the ideas and then running off in a completely unpredictable direction. Even multiple games that are based on the same episode title have nothing to do with each other. There were 2 Zombie Train Beyond Earth,
and
one of them was a 2D adventure game about someone who's moonwalking, and the other one was a sort of Blendo Games inspired first person experience,
vignette,
experience on a train. It's the stuff is just, the output is just so high from, like you said, from people who are clearly veteran game designers to people who have never made something before but felt like they had the space allowed to them to do it. One other like total side note to this is we ran a ton of Wizard Jam out of itch.io's app, which is really new. That's just called Itch. That thing is really like it's clearly got some growing pains and is new, but as far as my ability to experience a game jam goes, it's never been as easy as this before. Where
it's amazing.
You can go to the Wizard Jam page inside of that app and then just click. There's an add to collection button on every game's icon that you can press, and then from there there's a download button, and it basically you can run the entirety of a game jam, like you can play the entirety of a game jam as if it was like a Steam library, where you have the latest version of the game. It only gives you the ones that run on your platform, and then you can just press the launch button, and it pops you into the game, quit, and you're back at a list of launchers, as opposed to the usual game jam experience, which is downloading 30 RAR files and unzipping them to various directories, then finding the executables and whatever else, like, and not knowing where the controls are. Like, it was a really nice experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So yeah, please check this out either at twitch.tv/idlethumbs or youtube.com/idlevideos. And then, as Jake said, all the games are at itch.io/jam/wizard-jam-2016. The stuff was just amazing. Oh, and you can also go to the Idle forums, actually, and there's an entire Wizard Jam sub-forum that has like a intro thread and everything else.
And also there's development, like rolling development threads for almost every game in the jam. So if you're curious about like the motivation behind any of these games or the process the developers use, they document, like everyone in that jam does a great job of documenting their process.
Yeah. And then subscribe to us on either YouTube or Twitch so that you get new videos of these as they go up. We're going to do another one. Also, if you watch the archive on Twitch, you can see the amazing Twitch chat emotes that we now have for subscribers to our Twitch channel, which currently are just me and Nick. Our little heads can show up in Twitch chat now. But when we get enough subscribers, we will unlock the ability to add more emotes, and we'll add Jake. And we actually have like queued up.
There's a lot of them coming.
Almost everyone who's ever been involved with the Idle Thumbs podcast in there. So that will be very exciting. Those are by John Christensen or Jan Christensen, perhaps.
I'm not sure. Yeah.
I'm not sure. And they're really, really good.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is related, but unrelated to get to Wizard Jam, but related to Itch. I just want to quickly mention something, which is that I bought what is being called first access to Overland, which is the sort of XCOM-like game from Finji, which I kind of just bought on a whim. It was a $20, sort of early access thing that, again, they're calling first access, because I just really, really liked how they're offering access to it. They're selling it through Itch, or they're distributing it through Itch, I should say.
Yes. They might also be using it for the
they might. I can't remember, but I just put my credit card in and I got it, and it works sort of like authenticating a Humble Bundle thing, where you can just download it directly through an email that they send you, or if you're logged into Itch, you can associate it with your logged in Itch account, and then it shows up in your client, and they keep the game updated. The thing that I find really cool about what they're doing here is that they've actually been unlocking sort of essentially alpha access on a tiered basis. So they'll make like 500 keys available at a time, where they're like, okay, we're selling 500 keys to this alpha access basically of our game, and if you don't get into that before they run out of that stock of 500, you have to wait till whenever they next allow access to this.
The next big alpha push comes when they open new keys.
And I think it's really, really smart. I think it's a really good way to counteract some of the problems that often happen with early access games on Steam or anywhere else.
Dungeon and things like this.
Yeah, which is that
the game is out unofficially by the moment you put it on early access.
Right, and this just makes it totally unambiguous that like this game is not released. You are part of a very limited group of people who actually can play this right now. You're opting in to a constrained experience, constrained audience experience.
It's the
really
Ghost
smart.
Post version of game development.
Oh, man. So I can't say anything more about Overland because I've only played it for a few minutes because I just got it I just got it yesterday, and oh man, switching gears.
Oh, hold on. One thing real quick is for people who are, if you're a developer who's interested in that stuff, like if you've seen what Overland is doing, it's a set of itch. Like they have some APIs and a lot of backend tools for developers now in a section of itch called Itch Refinery.
Yeah.
And like, so if you want to read up about how that stuff works for controlling pricing and distribution and feature set in the itch version of early access, look up Itch Refinery. There's a ton of documentation. It's really cool stuff.
Have we talked about the Disneyland Ghost Post stuff on this podcast at all?
I think we've talked about it briefly. But.
Okay. So I don't know how much we can actually talk about this without just describing a bunch of puzzles and stuff, but it's just a really cool idea that I think is interesting. Disney for the last 3 months has been running this weird subscription box thing called Ghost Post that was also limited access. It was limited to the first 999 people who signed up to it, which is a reference to a sort of a gag from the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland and other Disney parks, where they suggest that there are 999 happy haunts who are going to follow you home. And it was
the mansion has 999 happy ghosts, but there's room for 1,000. Implying that you will be the final ghost.
That's true. I guess I'm combining two things because they also
there's that ghost that follows you home, whatever.
Right. But they can't. The fiction of this subscription box is that the ghosts have lost their ability to leave the haunted mansion. And so you have to like solve the mystery, like whatever, and fix it. What's cool about it is that it takes a thing that is sort of in vogue right now, which is subscription boxes, which are a weirdly proliferating idea on the internet right now, where there's a bunch of different companies now that all want to sell you like a box of crap every month that is just sort of trinkets and whatever. Or
clothing or food or whatever.
That's true, but I'm thinking more of the like clothing and food are like functional.
You're thinking of like the Loot Crate type situations?
Yes, I'm thinking of stuff that's just like fun stuff. That's not like a thing that you would have had to buy anyway, right? Like everyone has to buy food somehow. This is just one way of doing it. Everyone has to buy clothes somehow. No one actually needs to buy like a box of toys, basically. You just decide to. And the thing that's so cool about this is that it isn't just a bunch of arbitrary stuff. It's actually a series of stuff that you solve and you interact with, and some of it is amazing. Like it works with your iPhone. It actually requires an iPhone specifically, which makes sense because making something for only 1,000 people, they wanted to minimize, I guess, the amount of development and compatibility testing they had to do. But it's just every month for the last 3 months, there's just been a bunch of like weird, cool puzzles and just surprising experiences that you get in the mail. And then it culminates in, theoretically, if you have the ability to do so, you go to Disneyland and there's like, Jake, you've actually experienced this already. I have not, but I'm going to this weekend. I'm going to Disneyland this weekend. There's
content inside of the parks that responds to you as a player of the game because things run through an iPhone app. So, iPhones have Bluetooth and iPhones have GPS, and Disneyland knows what those things are. So there's things inside of the park that just react to you as a customer differently and actually play into the story of it. Like it turns into like a miniature Disneyified version of like a puzzle room or an ARG or something inside the park that's running just for you and other participants of this game. It's really cool.
Yep. Yeah. And a lot of people speculate, I think almost certainly correctly, that because the audience for this subscription thing is so small and could not possibly have even the smallest dent on Disney's bottom line, this must be sort of a pilot program for something larger scale they're looking to do. Yeah, either with subscription boxes or
like vacation
stuff or both. Or exactly.
Like, if your family's because like Disney's big, they're like especially in the Florida park, it seems like they're really big on trying to sell families huge week-long vacations months in advance, where you plan out the rides you're going to go on and you plan out where you're going to eat. And it seems very much like they could be like, and maybe pay $100 extra, and in the intervening 3 months, you and your family will get these weird boxes full of puzzles that contain a strange mystery that you can then get super excited to go solve when you're in the park.
Mm-hmm.
They did a very small version of this in Epcot a few years ago that was actually really cool. That was themed around the TV show Kim Possible. They turned Epcot, which is like Epcot Center is the theme park that has international pavilions of nations around the world. They would give you a cell phone and you would become a spy and you'd get missions in the various cities and go to them and it would make animatronics do all sorts of dumb things. Stuff like that seems really good. It's just a way to... They have all this space full of all this really high-tech stuff, and to reconceptualize it as a like gameplay space seems really smart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really cool. And it's hard to talk about a bunch of the specific contents of the box, but like I just want to mention one thing because it was just so surprising and rad. In the most recent box, one of the things you got that culminated after you solved like this other big puzzle that was actually kind of annoying and buggy in some ways is this like cardboard contraption that you snap together and then put a piece of clear plastic into, and then you slide your phone into it and it creates a like Pepper's ghost sort of holographic effect where 3 disembodied ghost heads like sing the Haunted Mansion song, and it looks like the cool reflection sort of ghostly effect that you see on the Haunted Mansion ride at Disneyland.
Oh, like in the big ballroom scene with the ghosts dancing around.
And just like watching that happen.
And they give you a tiny version of that works with your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good.
It was so cool. It was so awesome. It was just a fun, like totally surprising thing that was so well put together and so constructed. And if you like the Haunted Mansion, which I do a lot, the ride, it was just totally unexpected and great. And that's not something that, that's just a very specific little touch, but I just thought it was so cool.
That's cool.
Yep. Anyway, you guys want to do some reader mail?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. So, let's see here. We're going to have to probably not do tons of this because we're on a time limit right now, but, we'll do a few mails. So, okay. Erica writes, "Hey Thumbs, long time, first time, etc. Throughout the years, your robot news has worked to fascinate and terrify me. Today, I bring you an AI which rewrote a screenplay." And then she links to this on Ars Technica. She says, "Don't worry, it's not here to take our jobs yet. Currently, it writes at a bad high school drama production level. Cheers, Erica." Did you guys watch this?
I did.
I did
Yeah.
not.
Oh man. Okay. This is like a 8-minute or something weird short film that was created by feeding, I think, dozens and dozens and dozens of existing science fiction feature film screenplays into some kind of AI software, and then it spat out.
I think it was based on predictive text, actually.
It was
particular algorithm.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. You're right. You're correct about that. Yes. So they fed all these screenplays into a predictive text algorithm and then used that to just create all the lines to a screenplay.
Good.
And then they performed it and filmed it and shot it as though it were a
production.
a production. Yeah. A sort of like film
with real actors and etc.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's complete nonsense. I mean,
Yeah.
it's utter. It does not make me concerned. I'm not saying there aren't good reasons to be concerned about AI taking over all our jobs, but this in particular did not worry me because it was so incoherent.
It was completely incoherent. That said, it did make me realize, you know what it felt like to me is watching like a movie in a language that is not your own with no subtitles, where you could you
have a grounding in the language. But
yes. Well, in this case, it's certainly
Yeah,
but
feeling of like,
basically, it's incoherent.
They're
so
clearly
it's
talking
really
about a car. Oh, they're near a car now. But like, any more knowledge than that is
yeah. So you start to sort of read into it, but like I don't know, the acting carried a lot of that to the point where like you can kind of make up your own story for what's going on.
So this predictive algorithm could write Transformers 6 based on Transformers 1 through 5, maybe.
Yeah, I think
I would be interested to actually see something that focused.
Yeah, no, that would probably be more interesting.
Because they fed in just a ton of unrelated films, which obviously makes sense. But it would probably still create nonsense with the Transformers thing, but you could probably get a lot farther with a franchise that is that dumb and,
it can make up its own words and concepts that don't have to, and like it's notorious for not being coherent already.
Right.
But like maybe you could make the 7th or 8th or 9th X-Men movie.
Yeah. It was funny. It was worth watching because it was just ridiculous.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Daniel Primo writes, "Hey Thumbs, you guys were kidding around about Total War Sonic, but aren't you missing something? Halo Wars 2 is being developed by Creative Assembly, the developer of the Total War games. Total War Halo Wars, Total Halo Wars. Thanks, Daniel Primo, Atlanta."
Good.
I had totally forgotten that if I ever knew it.
I forgot that as well, yeah.
That's the quote on the back of the box.
What
Total
is?
War. I had totally forgotten about this. 5 stars, out of thumbs.
Yeah. All
And
right.
Halo Wars. Classic.
Mhm.
Classic.
Yep. Weird Halo Wars. What a I mean, I guess
Yeah.
I don't know.
Guys, we just got this Halo
Ensemble
Wars
Studios.
IP languishing. We should.
Yeah. People have such fond memories of studio closures and kind of awkwardly moving a cursor around a television screen. I guess it wasn't a cursor, but yeah.
All right. Jonathan Actzener writes, "Hey Thumbs, hearing you talk about card shuffling made me think of a documentary on Martin Gardner. Gardner was the longtime Scientific American math, puzzle, and game columnist. In the documentary, none other than Percy Diaconis, who's the guy who was in the video I talked about last week, talks about different ways of shuffling and dealing. The part that grabbed me was the talk of perfect shuffles, where you split the deck exactly in half and then alternate between stacks, A, B, A, B, A, B, A, B, etc. After 8 perfect shuffles, the deck comes back to the original configuration.
Yeah.
Diaconis demonstrates this as he's talking about it, and then describes how it would often apply to the clumping you see in Bridge. And then he links to a video about this, which I guess I can read, is vimeo.com/7176521.
Nice.
And now that I'm talking about Martin Gardner, I have to mention his annotated version of Carol's Alice in Wonderland /Through the Looking Glass. There's so many mathematical puzzle game and wordplay references in those stories, and Gardner does a masterful job of describing them for non-math types like myself. I can't recommend it highly enough, even for casual fans of that work. Thanks, Jonathan."
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to read that URL again, actually, because now I want to watch this, which is vimeo.com/7176521. Yeah, that's interesting. The name of the video is The Nature of Things, Martin Gardner.
Rad. I know last week I promised that I would have a capper to the Hat Baron stuff, but I don't think that I have time to do it justice this week. But next week we'll live in the end of the TF2 Steam economy. Now the cycle is complete, by the way, I think, and we've gone from TF2 to Dota 2 to Counter-Strike as the major Valve breadwinner, and also that is where the Hat Barons are now residing. That's their the Hat Barons haven. So it's yeah.
Good.
Well,
That's
you guys
probably
want to call it there?
Yeah.
I think we have to get out of here, but
yeah.
Cool. Thank you for listening to Idle Thumbs. If you enjoy this podcast, please tell a friend. And if you think we deserve it, please consider rating us or reviewing us on iTunes. We can also be found on Stitcher, and our podcasts go up every week on SoundCloud, which is where they're hosted. So there are other places you can listen to this podcast as well. And you can, obviously, iTunes is the big place, so that's why those ratings really help us out a lot. You can also follow us on Twitter at Idle Thumbs. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Idle Thumbs. We are now doing a lot more on Twitch at twitch.tv/idlethumbs. You can subscribe to us there. We're not requesting you do so. It's just an option. If you want to toss us a few bucks, and doing so will unlock those chat emotes for you. And I think if 5 more people do that, we can add some more chat emotes, which will be good. So that's a thing. And then all of those videos also go to YouTube once they're done at youtube.com/idlevideos. And we have a bunch of other podcasts on this network. You can see all of them at idlethumbs.net/shows. The limited run series by Teddy Deef, one of the developers of Hyper Light Drifter and now sort of incoming creative director at Square Enix Montreal. His series, Playscape Los Angeles, just concluded. So you can listen to all of those interviews with cool people from the Los Angeles game scene. Also at idlethumbs.net/shows. That's up on there. And yeah, plenty of other stuff. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Oh, thanks to Nick as well.
Oh.
Also,
You're welcome.
before you guys got here, when I was recording the pre-roll, I told the readers I was going to try and I picked an arbitrary word that I was going to say as many times as I could before you guys either noticed or got mad at me. So obviously that word was Slyboots.
I think Jay got mad on the first usage, so I